Mr. Auditor.
Thank you, Commissioners. I was going to start with a little overview of what we are doing with the budget by program. The PLRs are kind of all mixed up, so I'll try and identify those as I go through them. 2019 was a year of transition for the Auditor's Office with a new auditor, a new election management and voter registration system, and most of the year without a vehicle licensing subagent in Shelton, all putting unusual strains on the staff. One would hope that 2020 would represent a return to normalcy, but it being a presidential election year, normalcy is probably another year away. On the revenue side, the 2019 legislature adjusted the fee structure for vehicle licensing, so we are budgeting a 25% increase in licensing revenue from $360,000 to $450,000. There are also revenue adjustments in elections, mostly reflective of the fact that the state reimburses the county for odd year elections, and those costs are paid early in the even year. In addition, the state will reimburse for prepaid return postage. We have reduced our estimate of income from labels of lists in elections, shown in the sale of non-taxable merchandise as demand has decreased. On the expenditure side for the Auditor's Office, we've added funding for the Washington State Association of County Auditors Elections Conference, required to get certification by the state. In addition, we've added funding for a fax line, copier rental, and maintenance. Financial services budget adds $16,400 in overtime in PLR number 1. This will fund a much needed general overhaul of all current fund numbers for both the county and all special purpose taxing districts and every single one of the 11,197 active bars lines. Due to the internal controls in Munis, the burden to actually input these updated funds and bars falls on the financial services staff. The end result will benefit the county departments and the state auditor to get our funds and bars back into compliance. In recording, the budget supplemental returns funding for the manager to the current expense budget in PLR number 7. During the downturn, the salary was split between current expense and the recording O&M budget, meaning that there was not O&M money available to assist county agencies with the preservation of records. Shifting funding back to current expense will allow our office to offer services that align with the purposes of the O&M funds that we've been unable to do recently, and that is reflected in PLR number 11. The licensing budget adds 10% of the cost of our new election technician to reflect the fact that we cross-train our staff. The election tech is our only bilingual staff member, so she ends up assisting at the counter. In elections, there's a PLR number 3 for election security of $10,000 to provide physical security to the ballot processing room. This would include 24/7 cameras live streamed so citizens can see what is happening in that room at any time during a live election. In PLR number 6, there's $10,250 to provide a printed county voters pamphlet for our voters. This will be a big step for ensuring that voters have access to the information that they need to make informed decisions. The other election supplementals, number 4, 12, and 13, are either fully or partially reimbursed by the state. They will reimburse the county for the cost of the presidential preference primary and postage and prepaid return postage for ballots in all elections. The additional cost to the county associated with the presidential election year are nearly $16,000, and that's in PLR number 5. It's important to note that the state pays its cost for primary and general elections in odd numbered years, but not even, so Mason County taxpayers have to pay those costs. There are an unusual number of uncertainties brought on by changes to election law that the office has to prepare for. The 2018 legislature enacted same-day voter registration, allowing citizens to register up to 8 p.m. on election day. We have no way of knowing whether we will see 5 or 500 people lined up to register on election day, but we have to prepare for a large number because we're required to accommodate them. The outreach supplemental number 2 will be used to educate voters and hopefully limit the number of last-minute registrants. That is pass-through money from the state. Finally, not included in our budget, but critically important to protecting the county's fiduciary interest is funding $20,000 in contracting for an outside CPA firm to provide assistance to departments. This funding was vital to address the concerns raised by the state auditor regarding the clerk's office. In addition, we believe funding $30,000 for the equipment inventory and trackable assets is critical. That's all I have, and we're happy to go through individual PLRs or go however you want to go.
Before we do that, there was one, you were talking about the money that's being spent for the outside auditor now. I thought we had already shifted that over to the general fund this last year.
Yeah, we're talking about non-departmental. It was a little bit, it was blended in to the narrative.
It's on the non-departmental budget, not in our budget.
Okay.
But just wanted to highlight that as something that's important for the overall financial.
Okay, that's why I trying to put that together.
Yes.
Okay,
Not in our budget.
I agree.
Commissioner, you have? Okay. Do you want to go line by line, or do you want me to?
However you want to proceed,
Okay.
we're prepared to.
Okay, so I just had a couple of questions. So I was looking, this might be just for the commission. So as I kind of looked at it, I thought PLR 7, 8, 9, and 10 would be more along the lines of maintenance.
I agree with that.
Recording manager, yeah.
Or parts of those would be
Yes.
maintenance. So if we could make a note to scrub that, and then so for the O&M salary shift, what kinds of things would be happening if that was backed out into current expense that maybe aren't happening now?
Funding for the other departments that need to preserve their historical documents, like planning department, coroner, clerk's office, courts. Yep.
In the past, we were able to provide direct assistance and even money to other offices in the county to preserve records, which is what that fund is for. And since we've been paying half of the manager's salary out of that pot of money, it just hasn't been available, and the balance of that fund has been diminishing over time, and we want to return it to its purpose and be able to offer those services to other agencies.
It's just kind of as you mentioned, there were a lot of changes to the election side of things last session. From a purely kind of practical standpoint, you have a line of people out the door doing same-day registration, and it's 7:59. What happens?
So, one of the things we are doing already is talking to the League of Women Voters about being in our office on election day for the presidential primary and the general election, working the line. And so making sure that people who are in line know what they need to have when they get up to the front, that if there's a form to be filled out, that it's filled out when they get to the front, that they are prepared to move that line forward. I think in my discussions with other auditors, I think one of the facts of life is going to be that on election day, we're probably not going to be able to count ballots downstairs because we're going to have staff upstairs serving the counter, whereas in the past, all the counties were physically counting ballots on election day. What that's going to mean is later returns. But until we know what the situation is, we're going to have staff upstairs prepared to help citizens.
And that's already taken effect, right?
Correct.
And what have we seen? I know it's kind of apples to oranges,
Yeah, I mean, we haven't,
We had one person register same day.
Yeah, same
For the
day.
general, or for the primary election.
Yeah.
That's
the one thing is that the deadline before was 29 days, so we didn't send out almost any ballots, unless they were new to the state from 30 days before the election. And so now we're issuing ballots all the way up. So it's same day registration, but it's not just about what we're gonna be doing on election day, because the whole month before, we would be basically not issuing any additional ballots And so now we're just constantly, like, you move across town, we're gonna issue you a new ballot, you know, so there's a lot more extra work and a lot more education in terms of helping people understand why they have two ballots. You know, this is why you have, vote this one, not this one, you know, and things like that, so.
And the other reality of that on the budget side is that for people that register online, that we mail a ballot to after we've gone to our mail house, we are mailing those from the office with a stamp. It's 70 cents postage versus 10 cents postage at the mail house. So, I mean, that's a budgetary hit too, that we don't know how many, we will never know how many ballots that is until we're done, the election's over and we count them.
Yeah, I mean, even the last election, we had probably 800 replacement ballots. So that's even more of what's happening. So we already issued them a ballot, you know, the cost of all those envelopes, the ballot, the postage, the mail house cost. And then here we do it again in-house with staff, which is more expensive, you know, or extra help, stamps, you know, all the envelopes again and all the ballots.
And as far as the PLRs for the election-related items that are gonna be reimbursed by the state, do you have a total on that? All kind of rolled up?
Or did you include that in your revenue?
It's included both in the revenue and on the PLR.
Right.
So the postage paid one is about 98,000. 98,500.
That's number 4.
Yes. And then for the presidential primary, because we'll be reimbursed for the primary, but not the presidential election, so looking at about 50,500 for the presidential primary.
Which is at number 5.
Yeah.
Except for I'm seeing a different number on that. I see that over here as the total, but I see 158, you had 265.
There's 3 PLRs that
A difference of
affect.
106.
There's 2 PLRs that equal the 106 amount, number 5 and number 12.
Okay.
Number 5 is for 50,500, and number 12 is for 55,897.
And number 12 is, if I'm not mistaken, the odd year
Yeah, that's the
reimbursement
pay.
that comes in January.
And then the 98,000 is in postage, not in, that's under the grant revenue line.
So, I mean, kind of where I'm headed with that is we want to make sure that we take that as maintenance, you know.
Yeah.
We don't want to obviously lose out on any of that money, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. So I
That's-
just want to make sure that it's recorded the right way. And
Yeah, and that's where one of the problems in a good way comes up. I don't see the expenditures out. I see the revenue coming in those numbers, but I don't, for 12, for example. You're bringing in all that money for 12, where is it going out for PLRs for 55,000?
It's this year's expenses.
So it's the 20, this was money that was spent in 2019 that we are being reimbursed for physically in 2020. We get the check in 2020, it is reimbursement for our election costs in 2019.
But we covered it in 19 though, so.
Correct.
So I guess my point is we've tried when people have the extra revenue to keep
leave it
some.
with you.
Yes.
That would be fine.
But the thing is, it's a one-time, so you might want to look at that when you're going over your PLRs that are different. You might want to look at it as a one-time. There's no guarantee we'd do that, of course, but that's what we've historically tried to do is when you have the extra, we try to empower your organization.
It's this crazy cycle in elections where the state reimburses for odd year elections, but not the general and primary and general election in even years. And the money comes the next year, and so.
And we're on a 4-year cycle too, so they pay every 2 years, but
But it'll disappear at the end of the year.
So they,
So
yeah. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
No, so the hit to the budget is actually gonna come in
Next year, yes.
21 when we don't get a reimbursement check for 20, but have those costs, right?
Should
So-
we be saving that money then?
And how?
How would we do that?
I mean, we could, you know, make Leo track it. And
Give it to Leo to keep track of it.
We've had conversations, and I know, I've seen they have some in here, so I would love to see them expending more money into travel and training and stuff like that. This might be a perfect opportunity. This may also be a perfect opportunity for maybe adding a line of 5,000 for that, we just did this.
Yeah, accessible community
Yeah.
advisory committee.
For dealing with the handicapped folks that he's put together, to have money to, if he decides, because he's still working on the side, if he decides he wants to move forward, it'd be nice if they had a little money to cover the time and stuff, because they might have to offset it with some either overtime or extra help. But these might be some of those opportunities to consider that when we're looking at.
I know that there are some counties that have essentially a revolving fund to smooth out the cycle of money from the state. I don't know how that works. I've only heard it talked about at a very high level, but I can certainly look into that for
I'd be
future
really
purposes.
interested in that. I think, it's elections money, and I think,
Yeah,
if we can help kind of, protect ourselves from the blow in '21 with some of this, that might be the more prudent. But I'm open to whatever. I just think if we can just make a note that we need to revisit that, I guess is.
the other thing is that the auditors are continuing to pursue fair share funding as our highest legislative priority to get the state to pay its fair share in even numbered years, which would take care of this by smoothing that cycle out, of that they'd always pay their fair share, whether it was an odd numbered year or an even numbered year.
Well, see, and even if we half and half do something, because historically you end up giving it back part of it every year anyway, through the unexpended budget authority. Even though we've done this in the years that I've been here, just watching that, so.
Yes.
And so it's just two final things for me. One, we mentioned it to Patty McLean about the salary. If there's your comments before, if you wanted to do a donation back, we can just talk to staff and we can do a line item for that, like Commissioner Noto and I did. The other thing, finally, on the election side, just what would your priority be between cameras and locking and pamphlet? And there are a lot of items, and as we go through this and we kind of get down to the nitty gritty, what would be kind of?
I mean, my number one is election security. I think we need to beef up security in the ballot processing room. That's a one-time cost, as opposed to if you start to do a voters pamphlet, you start that and you don't ever stop. I mean, in reality, that's going to be an ongoing expense. What we're looking at is 4 to 6 streaming cameras in there that from the day ballots get mailed, they get turned on, they'd be hooked up to a DVR, and so you could go back and see what was going on in there, last Tuesday at 3 o'clock, if all posted through YouTube, which solves a safety problem in terms of the ability to get into our system where the video is stored. It adds a layer. The ongoing cost of that is I think $150 a year, so almost nothing. But and also to provide some locking mechanisms on the computers that have our tally system, so that if somebody was in there, it would take another layer to get to the computers. I mean, I think given everything that's going on in the world around election security, that's going to help people to believe that when I tell them that our room is secure and safe, and that I can say, go check.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my highest priority.
Okay. Would those cameras be on during a canvassing board?
Yeah. Until the election's certified, then we'll turn them off.
Noted.
I do like how you did
We'll thank Jennifer for that.
Yeah. That helped me out a lot. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
Jennifer, she's very organized. She's very helpful.
I try to be.
Thank you.
So for the election revenue, we can restrict it or commit it in the financial statements. So I do an analysis as part of the GASB 54. So that's no problem.
I think it'd just be helpful for having another thing to consider. Just-
Yes.
I'm all about the reserve.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like reserves.
So commissioners, just again, to clarify, so 7, 8, 9, and 10 on the PLRs, you're saying should be maintenance. Number 7 is, we're removing Jill from the auditor's own.
In halftime, right?
Yes, into full-time into the auditor's fund, or current expense. So you're in agreement that that should be maintenance?
Which one there? Again,
That's
Jen?
number 7.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I mean, we can, I would maybe want to revisit that, just not opposed to it, but want to revisit that, but I think the bulk of those are maintenance.
Yeah. Except for the fact that moving that person, it still would all be maintenance. In
Either
somebody's-
way,
in
yeah.
somebody's budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as long as we're just noting that one way or another, we're paying for it.
We're still gonna pay her.
Now, under that same thing, wouldn't 4 and 5 also be maintenance, because they're money in, money out?
Yeah, and that's why I was asking about making sure that we're capturing the right place for the election money coming in.
4 certainly, I would say 4 certainly,
Because
and
that's the right
5
idea.
is a little more complicated.
Well, still, that's 55,000 from the other that
Right.
you have allocated out
Yes.
already, so money in, money out. It would be the 12 that is the questionable, right?
And the 20.
Was it 12?
So there's the printing of election materials.
Yeah, it's done.
I would say, yeah, so I would say, you know, like legal notices is probably maintenance, so under there.
But there's 55,000 for 12, and they didn't account for the 12
Oh, you're on
going out.
12.
Yeah.
I was on 5.
Oh, yeah, the 5. But for me, the 12, the 55 is the one I think there's no money in. There's money in, but no money out. By doing all the others, that takes care of everything else for me, pretty much. By moving to maintenance where they went, that would be.
Commissioner Trask, any?
No, this is pretty straight.
Okay.
Okay?
Anything else for us you want to think about?
That's it.
All right.
Okay?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. 30 minutes, not bad.
Yeah.